we focused on the responsible one. And so in the Midwest, you can see there are many people who step up, very community oriented, and put themselves in the center of lots of lives, making sure that everything happens for everybody else. And I've coined it the phrase, making do like the Millers. So think of it as the opposite of the coin of keeping up with the Joneses. And these making do like the Millers folks are the people that are penny pinchers, super invested in their community, ultra responsible, and ultimately great accumulators because they're so consistent at saving, but not great at actually spending in retirement.
Hello, and welcome back to CBS Spotlight, the podcast where we shine a light on the people and ideas helping others build more confident and more meaningful financial lives. I'm Eric Alvarado, along with my co-host, Mr. Ted Hikes. Our guest today is Liz Hand, owner of Pleasant Wealth, a financial planner and a coach who is redefining what it means to have a healthy relationship with money. Liz's work goes far beyond spreadsheets and projections. He actually helps women navigate life transitions, untangle money myths, and really step into financial clarity with confidence, compassion, and purpose. So Liz, welcome to the show. We appreciate that. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Well, Liz, thank you for being here again. We've got a lot of questions, obviously, we only want to ask you today. But I think before we do that, it would be great to give our audience kind of some background information on who you are, how you got into the business, how you came to be where you are today. Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a second generation financial planner. My dad was in the industry back in 1998 and started Pleasant Wealth. And I stepped in right after college. But the work that we're doing now at Pleasant Wealth really began in about 2020, probably 2020-ish, because in addition to COVID and all of the things there, I was facing some pretty big life transformations. We had gotten into the nitty-gritty of what it meant for my brother and I to take over the firm, really getting into our succession plan. And in that process, I hired a coach, and she was an ontological coach that helped me process what it meant for me to be in this dynamic change with my dad and my brother, where I had been the long-term employee, the dutiful daughter, and now I'm taking over the firm. And that power dynamic shift is one that's difficult for any relationship to face, and it certainly was the case for us. Okay. Lots of story behind that, but in hiring a coach, I just really fell in love with this transformative idea that when we understand life differently, we approach money differently. And so I've been, since that time, integrating coaching into our firm and really looking at the niche of working with women going through life transition to help them feel more open rather than constrained by money.
Excellent.
Excuse my ignorance, Liz, but I have to ask because I have no idea. What is an ontological coach?
Yeah.
I placed that word in there just to pique your curiosity. Don't you worry. No, ontological, it just means who we're being. So if you think about it, you can do lots of tasks with different ways of approaching it. If I'm at my home washing my dishes, I can be washing my dishes from the place of, I love my family, this is such a great day, la, 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 doing the dishes. I can also do dishes from the place of, this sucks, how come nobody's helping me? And those are very different stances. So that's who we're being. We use that state of being everywhere we go. And so ontological coaching is one where you're coaching to your state of being, not to what you're doing. And when you shift what you find, that underlying motivation and the way that you approach life, you shift radically through multiple avenues of life.
Interesting. So it's almost like your perspective, the perspective that you're approaching the world. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Other people have used the word mindset as like a shortcut. I like that just for the quick understanding of what I'm doing with folks is really working at their belief system. And specifically, I love the approach of just understanding who we be in the world and making that more and more expansive.
I've got to admit, Liz, you got my interest piqued here. So tell me a little bit about how you actually integrate that in your firm and in your everyday dealing with your clients and in your financial planning.
Yeah. as I've tried to shift the model to something that feels really resonant for me, I have formally handed off the role of financial planner to my brother. And so all of our A clients, when they meet with us, they're meeting with both of us separately for two different styles of meetings so that I can stay in the lane of coach and not have to get into the analytics or the delivery of advice. I can stay open and focused on curiosity that helps the client experience something different within themselves. I find that it's an adjustment for clients to understand like what is happening here. But once they get kind of used to the flow of the conversation, they realize I have no agenda and I'm actually supporting the process of them freeing themselves up. So it's all about personal freedom. And I find in those conversations, I usually find something that we can do for them financially, whether it's a projection that helps them understand their finances better or a cash flow that supports something that they're trying to do. Um, Super exciting. But also, I am probably the newest avenue that's coming forth from me in 2026 is I wrote a play that really speaks to the typical being state of my clients.
Oh, wow. An
Yeah,
actual like play, like on stage kind of thing.
on stage. It's a
Oh,
two-person
wow.
play, and I am one of the actors. And then I have hired a professional actor with me, and we focus on the responsible one. And so in the Midwest, you can see, there are many people who step up, very community oriented, and put themselves in the center of lots of lives, making sure that everything happens for everybody else. And I've coined it the phrase making do like the Millers. So
Yeah.
think of it as the opposite of the coin of keeping up with the Joneses.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
And these making do like the Millers folks are the people that are penny pinchers, super invested in their community, ultra responsible, and ultimately great accumulators because they're so consistent at saving, but not great at actually spending in retirement. So the play
Hmm.
approaches this way of being in a very lighthearted and straight to the heart manner. It's in a 50-minute presentation that can fit into a conference. So I'll be promoting that with local women's conferences within the next year.
Cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. How do we get a ticket for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping to go to financial conferences too. So that's like part two.
That's great.
That
Wow.
is,
Well, I love it.
that is such an interesting approach, Liz. I think, I may have cut Eric off, but we've obviously never heard anything about, heard anything like that and that approach on how you get your message across. I'm curious, talk to me a little bit about your, I don't want to say your target client, but what does the perfect client look like for your firm, and how do you kind of incorporate this overall approach when you're bringing that client on board?
Yeah, the target niche that I work with is women in transition, and oftentimes it's nearing retirement. What I found is that the women that I tend to work with are women that have been really good accumulators. And so their experience is either, oftentimes they're actually avoiders of money. They've been doing all the diligent work, but kind of an automatic basis. It's kind of been in the background. They've either delegated to their spouse who has handled the financial decisions or a relative, or they've been just working in a business, saving into a 401k. It's kind of like set it and forget it. But excellent accumulators. And this phase of retirement is really a mindset shift that you go through. And so the way that they used the success that they built doesn't work in the same way to give them a satisfying retirement. And so this place of putting yourself in the center is a form of accumulation, but it's people accumulation or relationship or significance accumulation. And retirement is all about decumulation, enjoying your time, enjoying your money, enjoying your energy and attention, and spending relationships differently. And so they've never given themselves permission to relax, to spend. And so the play really highlights how they feel stuck. My favorite compliment is when someone is like, I feel like you're in my head, Liz. And I got that actually this past weekend. I did a play reading for a group of women here in Canton. There were about 50 women present. And one of my friends attended, and she's like, I kind of feel personally attacked right now.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, that's a great compliment because I'm really trying to listen and understand the motivations of people. And really understand where they're getting stuck. Yes, on a financial level, like I can do all the maneuvers to make their financial plan work, but if ultimately they're not willing to spend money, the
Hmm.
plan doesn't really add to life.
Sure.
Interesting. I'm so interested. I mean, I've seen, a bunch of movies recently and things where it's kind of that same concept where people are so responsible and so, and I don't know if it's a Midwest thing or what, but it seems like they're so responsible now that they tend to not want to spend a dime. And this is treat yourself a little bit, or, do something with that money. And so it's interesting that you're bringing this up. How, thinking about where you're in the Midwest, I guess, how generationally, that seems like a mindset there. And how does that, I guess, your approach affecting people around you and in your communities that, have had this long idea of just penny pinching and never spending a dime, kind of deal for those hard times or whatever. But how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, so all of that comes down to belief systems that we have. And those belief systems get passed down generationally, and they come through clips or patterns of behavior that we pick up as very young children. So, make hay while the sun shines. Many hands make light work. Um, a penny saved is a penny earned. Save for a rainy day. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Like all of those things actually really impact the way that, especially in the Midwest, that we approach life and that we approach money. All of those are saying, hesitate, do not settle because hardship is coming. And so when you're entering a retirement phase and you have that stance, you're not going to spend your money. And if you think about that, if you've spent 6 decades with that mindset, and your parents spent 8 decades with that mindset, and your grandparents spent 8 decades with that mindset, and that is a lot of compounded belief there. So it's why I love bringing coaching into the situation, because coaching is working on those core beliefs and helping you shift. Because the farmers, they had to do that. When people first moved into the Midwest, you had weather patterns that they had to watch like a hawk because their livelihood, their survival depended on it. And as our society has evolved, I don't know about you, but I don't look at the weather every day. My husband does. I don't. And it bit
I'm a
me.
dad. I do.
I didn't wear a coat yesterday, and it did snow
Oh
after a
my
day of
goodness.
a lot of heat. But
Mhm.
needless to say, like it's not dependent on my survival, and so I don't have to pay as close attention to the weather. And in other ways, I know that's anecdotally just with the weather, but in other ways, our
Mhm.
society has shifted. We've created a lot of convenience. We use our resources differently, that um, we don't have to have the same stance that those farmers did back then. And so finding what was survival then is now creating a breakdown in our ability to enjoy life now.
That's very interesting. I'm curious, like, do you see clients taking very small steps towards this ultimate goal, or is there an aha moment, let's say, when you're working with a client where suddenly it's like things start to click for them, and obviously they're not going to go, or I'm guessing, I'm not going to say obviously because I don't know, and that will be part of the question, but I'm guessing you don't go from a mindset that you've been set in for 60 years, 6 decades of your life, to your point, to suddenly like, okay, it's okay for me to spend money. I want this. I don't necessarily need it, but I can afford it, and therefore I'm going to buy it. Is there a step along that way where you really feel like, okay, the client's starting to get it, they're starting to get comfortable with this process?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. So we have the first engagement someone has with our firm is a 5 week permission to retire process, which for the money avoider, that's what they're seeking. I just want permission to retire. When they come through that process, what they don't realize is that we're going to show them you absolutely can retire. And even though in their intro call they were telling me, you tell me I can retire, I'm turning in my notice tomorrow. The moment I show them by week 3, they're like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll work another 2 years. And that's just part of the breaking down of a belief system. So I don't get too rattled with the hesitation that they bring back, or the anxiety that really gets stirred up right at that moment. We keep putting the plan in place for them. And it takes about a year for someone to work their way into feeling comfortable with retirement. And we have a lot of maneuvers that we do just from a behavioral stance, where even if they're telling me I don't necessarily need the money right now, my perspective is, okay, well, let's start a little stream now to you just so you can get, the flow opened up. And if after, 6 months we need to reduce it, that's fine. But let's just start it and see what it feels like. Um, there are maneuvers that you can do as an advisor to help them get comfortable with the idea that it's safe for me to take from my investment accounts. Now, I know I've just used the word safe, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, compliance. And what I mean for that is like psychologically safe. That
Mhm.
is the goal that we're looking for
Mhm.
when we make a life transition is now that my whole world has been shaken up, is it okay for me to proceed?
So I hope this doesn't take us down like the wrong road or anything. 'Cause I love where we're going with this, but my curiosity goes to, okay, when people start to loosen those purse strings a little bit, what are you seeing as far as some of the first things that these people are doing with that money that they're allowing themselves to take? Are they, going out and buying motorcycles or trailers? What are you seeing them taking cool vacations? What are they doing?
It's so funny that you say that. So I think because this is the opposite side of the coin of making or keeping up with the Joneses, I think the person that comes at life from the keeping up with the Joneses stance might first go there. But these folks that are in this making do like the Millers stance, it's smaller things. And it's usually around, well, actually, it depends from the person. So we start with a purpose statement that helps them understand what really gives them a lot of life and joy and freedom. And so we worked with a woman recently, and what I found with her is that gardening is her thing. And so it's actually more important for her to stay in her home than it is to do some of the other things. She's got some health concerns. And so giving her permission to make home updates and renovations so that it's safe for her to stay in the home as long as possible so that she has access to her garden. Because the moment she goes to a condo or to an apartment,
It's all gone.
that's taken away. And so that's her happy place. How can we preserve that? Another person, she realized she spends so much time in her home that the beauty and the aesthetic of her home is really important. So she started spending some money with a designer.
Oh, cool.
There was another family that they always had this idea of taking all of their kids on a vacation. And so they planned it. And that one was kind of fun because they came back and were like, never doing that again. And I I love that conversation because we have to we have been trained and taught and skillfully learned the process of accumulating.
Hmm.
Probably anybody that fits into this mindset was never taught how to spend thoughtfully other
Uh,
than spend little. And so they would always like, you know what, I really want the red one, but the blue one's on sale, so I'm going to get the blue one. Or
Mhm.
last year's model is discounted, so I'll do that. Or this is on sale this week, so even though I didn't need it, this is what we're having for dinner.
hmm.
They've never learned to go from a place of choice. And so these spending experiments that they end up doing, I think they're really healthy. We give them parameters like this year, consider $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000, and then they get to say what it is that they do. But we're also helping them articulate based on your purpose. It sounds like it might be in this area, but where do you
Hmm.
see that you want to spend? So it really depends from person to person.
That's great.
So it's helping them. It's really about helping them identify what's important, what do you value, and then once you kind of help them identify that and they get comfortable with that, yes, you're right. That is very important to me. It makes my life, gives my life improvement. Then you help them, okay, now this is something that makes sense to start to spend a little bit of money on it and start to maybe invest some happiness, personal happiness by doing this deaccumulation process within this particular area. It's very interesting. I could see that as a major shift, but also, um, I think that makes it easier, right? Like it's easier to kind of cross the Rubicon, so to speak, from being a very tight penny pincher. I'm going to hold everything close to the chest to getting to where, okay, it's okay to spend money on this because this really does bring joy into my life, whether it's gardening or your
Yeah.
home or
Yeah.
went on a vacation with your family, which doesn't sound like that ended up being
Yeah. And
exactly what they thought it would be.
honestly, I think part of the process has been my own decision to cross that threshold myself. I had some life experiences that made me call to question, like, why am I over saving towards retirement?
Hmm.
And giving myself more permission to spend money on today. And without me having gone through that transformative money mindset shift, I don't know that I could have guided clients in the same way, because as the industry goes, there's parameters, there's like best practices on what it is that you tell people to spend. And a lot of advisors tend to default back to, well, do we need to spend it? And that is just a triggering question for this make do like the Miller's person, this responsible one that's like, oh, you know what? No, I don't need to spend it. No, you know what? Let's just leave it there. I'll take my RMDs when it's time. That's it. Um, so Liz had to come to terms with what it means to be a person who has money and spends money in a thoughtful way, to be able to guide clients through that same process. And I think where I see the industry going is that advisors will need to go through their own personal transformation as AI takes some of the legwork of financial planning. So we need to continue to shift what it is that we're offering to clients. And data is showing that clients are starting to ask for more of a coaching-like experience. And I say, just through my experience as a coach, certified as a coach, that the best coaching that can happen is when you've gone through the experience yourself, when you've tested and transformed your own thoughts and feelings and beliefs.
Well, this is awesome. I there's so much more that we want to learn about and hear from you. And so I think if it's okay with you, we'd love to continue and have you back on next week and go from there. But for all those out there, this has been CBS Spotlight. Thank you for joining in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.